So you're recording. And so now then I have plotted this congregation. Let me do it again just to make sure. And you know that you can go back to clear map from here. And that takes us back to where we started. And then I'm going to come in and plot congregants, include labels, which includes the name, and plot them. And then I can collapse this, and you'll now see that I can zoom out and see everyone in the congregation. And then, of course, I'm going to do a shape, because you have to do a shape to what? To do reports. So I'm going to come over and do a polygon, collapse this, and then I'm going to draw a polygon around the congregation. I can edit that polygon if I want to, just by clicking on the data points. And then I can come in and do anything I want to do as far as changing that polygon shape. And I can even come in, of course, again, scroll. I've got that data point. So then I can come in and I can modify that data point and change and do anything I want to do with that shape to get who I really want. Zoom in so I don't get people there. I get the data point. And so now then again, I can zoom back out and I can change my polygon. So now if I go look at the selection information, you'll now notice that I've actually brought in 82% of the congregants, the parishioners, in this shape. That's good enough for our purposes of conversation today. See, I didn't go all the way down this way and pick those folk up, but that's all right. Or guess what? I could actually come down and grab them as well from that perspective. So you get to choose what you're trying to get to in your shape. And then it changes, of course, how many folk you found in this shape. Now, when I go to demographics and a report, remember we talked about predefined reports. This polygon, I'm going to do quick insight just to have a report to work with. And then it builds that report. You see it building up here at the top right-hand side. You see it building here as well. I can go ahead and collapse this to get it out of my way. Let it finish building this quick insight report, because I want to take us today to how do I read the Experian Mosaic report. And I'm going to give you a very, very, very valuable insight that helps you to have better knowledge about what you see when you look at a quick insight report. So I'm going to go open that report. Give it a second to finish. Come on. There we go. Now I've got that report. Zoom in a touch so you guys can see what I'm looking at. It tells me both the story view that we've talked about. We talked about the theme view. And so I have all of that information. But when I get down to the bottom of this particular report, it has, guess what? The Experian Mosaic, top 10 Mosaic segments. If you would, Heidi, write down B07, B07, C13, and H26.
Got it.
All right. So now then I can go down and I can open the Mosaic Handbook, and I'm holding my command key on my Mac, and it's going to open it in a different window. There it comes.
Yep.
And the first one I told you to choose was B07. So I'm going to scroll down, find B07. There it is. And so now then I can see the details about who are B07s, which are, by the way, the most numerous community in that particular shape that I did. Ages, single family, income, how many family members are there? 51 to 65, there are probably some teenagers in this group, and there may even be a single parent with kids back in the house with their kids, as you're looking at right there from that perspective.
And again, this is for the congregants in that.
This is,
yes.
That's right. That's right. This is looking at the most likely group to find in that area are BO7s.
Mhm.
And if I went back and looked again at the numbers, it'll actually say in this study area, almost 14.25% are indeed BO7s. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean just the individual congregants, but it's saying the neighborhood in which
Yes.
they're looking at, they're living in, they're likely to be BO7s because of their neighbors and because of where they live. The C13s are going to be there as well. And so you'll notice that it's looking at by percentages of looking at most of the folk in those study areas are going to be O7, C13, and H26. And it continually decreases from there, from that perspective. And the reason I took you over and let you see that particular one, I could go and look at the H as well, but I'm going to take you back to the report, because in the report, underneath this is what's called the Mission Impact Mosaic Application Guide by Thomas Bandy. Have either one of you ever heard of Thomas Bandy? All right. Well, he is a church growth and ministry person. And when I held by my command key, now it's going to open up for me Tom Bandy's work on helping you to understand an Experian Mosaic report. And he has broken each one of these segments down into looking at leadership qualities, hospitality qualities, education to expect to find in a BO7. What should I be doing for small groups in a BO7 kind of community? What about what style of worship should there be? How about the best way to outreach, the best way for facilities to look to meet the needs of a BO7? How about their finances? What about their communication strategies? Now, you saw some of that from the Experian Mosaic report, but now I can go down and say, I need to read the information about the Bs, and specifically, I want to look at the BO7s. So Tom Bandy has provided us with a bit of information about each one of those. It wasn't BO7. What was it?
It was BO7 across the ages.
Okay. So now then when I go open and look at BO7, it's going to show me Tom Bandy's breakdown of who this is. Flourishing couples, multi-generational families living in a wide range of lifestyles in suburbia. Their religious experiences in a nutshell, an important part of healthy lifestyle, common spiritual issues, feeling broken and rejected, anxieties over guilt and displacement. So you're already seeing that he is massaging those individual Experian Mosaic codes and helping you to better understand who these folk are. Their common church presence, their church membership is important. They have value, life cycle celebrations, as in Christmas and Easter kinds of places. They may be irregular attenders. That doesn't surprise me. I can compare their current church to their congregational roots. I can learn to understand them as avoiding radical ideas and changes, and they believe that harmony is a high priority. Who are they likely to be seen around as far as where they live? What about family groups? So I can see that by B7, 8, 9, and 10 are going to be similar kinds of families, and frequent neighbors might include C's and A's and F's. I don't remember what I just gave you as the other ones to write down, but what were they? The other two.
C13
I'm sorry.
and H26.
So guess what? There they are. They live in the same neighborhood. C13 lives in that same neighborhood with the BO7s. I've got that as much as I can grow it at this point. So I hope that's sufficient that you can see that like that.
Yeah, it's good.
And then it gives me general comments about BO7s. And then it gives me a key, high priority, medium priority, low priority. And it gives me that information in leadership preferences. What's the best way in the traditional community of BO7s, enablers and CEOs, not so much caregivers or disciplers, but if it's a radical community, mentors and pilgrims as far as leadership preferences. And it goes into a whole detailed integration of what about leadership preferences for BO7. It's helping you to know about how to care for them. What about lifestyle connectivity? Their hospitality preferences, man, they like healthy choices. They like multiple choices when it comes to food when you have it at church. So, and then it gives you both that for personal relationships, refreshment choices, intentionally indulgent, lots of sugar and caffeine, but they're also health conscious. So I might not want to have a candy bar at an event for them, but they also have a tendency to be a little intentionally indulgent. So I might do that too. If there's more than one service on Sunday morning, make sure the strong fellowship is offered in between those two services. Church is big. Generations of the same family may worship in different services. I will guarantee you, my wife and I will go to a more traditional service than our two kids and their kids. Guarantee it. Guarantee it. And that's what he says right here. And it talks about what are the the worship preferences for these folk. If they're traditional church, very educational worship. If it's an inspirational service, as in modern, as in more contemporary, or postmodern, they're looking for coaching kind of worship. Now, I'll give you two things here, just FYI. The green, red, and yellow, or for those of us who aren't colorblind, and you see the little X's beside of these, for those of us who are colorblind, it wanted to give you some indication of what the green ones were supposed to be for those higher priorities of worship priorities. Here it talks about worship, and then it talks about educational and the different types of worship, education. Here's curricular and experimental, biblical and topical. In this BO7, man, they're pretty wide varied as far as their educational preferences. They'll be open to all different kinds of that kind of educational. What about their small group preferences? And it is extremely rare that you would see leadership and focus and green on all four of those. That's just almost unheard of. You'd see they're used to having rotated leaders or a trained leader. They both like curriculum study and they like shared affinity. So this is a group that's a little less easy to see about small group preferences, but I can do more of outreach preferences. What are their personal needs and what might get them to volunteer in their community? If it's about health and wellness and quality of life and human potential or interpersonal relationships, those are important for personal care and readiness to volunteer. Man, basic survival and human potential, they'll jump on opportunities to volunteer, maybe not just openly volunteer for anything and everything, but give them topics that they can volunteer for about basic survival. We've got a Red Cross bloodmobile coming into town. That'd be something this group would absolutely jump at. What about human potential? I might do something that talks about Financial Peace University kind of an event for BO7s. Facility preferences. I was minister of music at First Baptist Church in Decatur, Georgia, and we had a traditional church sanctuary out the wazoo. Pews, choir loft, platform, chairs on the platform, pulpit on the platform, and behind it there were no screens, but there was a huge pipe organ. So ecclesiastical would have been their property type. If it were technology, postmodern, yep, we had sound systems, we had cameras, we had that capability to stream worship. By the way, I added that while I was at that church, so I know how it got there. And then what about symbolism? Man, we celebrated Advent, we celebrated the holy times, and we did Advent wreaths and the whole 7 yards with BO7s. Would I probably have seen much contemporary post-Christendom? Nope, not with this group, not with the BO7s as much. But I will tell you, my pastor at the time decided he wanted to have a contemporary worship service. Eric, he didn't think about who the congregation was, where they were placed, what the room looked like. And so he says on Easter Sunday, we're going to start a new worship service. It's going to be a contemporary worship service. I said, wait, whoa. Who are we trying to reach? Why are we doing this? Oh, we're going to get a mailer. And they did a 50,000 person mailer and invited everybody that was in that mailer to this Easter new contemporary worship service, advertised as a contemporary worship service. I went to him and I said, Pastor, what's your intention of what's the difference between that contemporary service and our regular service? Oh, nothing. We'll wait and see who shows up and then decide what we need to do. I went, wrong answer. Don't do this. This is a mistake. I mean, we pushed the mud out of this thing. That Sunday, we had 2,500 people that we'd never seen before show up for this brand new worship service, expecting, because we'd advertised it was going to be a contemporary worship service. Within 6 weeks, we had moved to the chapel and we were averaging 100 folks. MissionInsite sure would have helped us to have done that right. I was for contemporary service, but he had no clue what he was doing when he tried to pull it off. So I won't call his name, Peter, but that's as much as I'll say about that.
It's always Peter.
It's always Peter. Yeah, well, the Simon in him was absolutely very prevalent. Giving target, unified budgets and general funds. That shouldn't surprise you. Giving method, informed philanthropy, and pledging. So it's telling you, Bandy has done a fantastic job, and he even goes into what we saw over there on that BO7 screen, that the best ways to reach them are email, social media, and communication and church participation, email and social media, not text messaging, not so much broadcast streaming TV for BO7s. Remember that, what we're looking at when we're getting this information. Now, give me, if you would, the second one that I gave you. What was the second one?
C13.
So I'm going to go to C. I'm going to go to 13. How is it different? Then I've got all that same detail, that same kind of detail on C13s. Are they different? Sure, they're different. Some of the things are similar because we've already heard that they're likely to be seen in common groupings from that perspective, right? Give me the third one. I'm curious to see what the third one is.
H26.
All right. How's it different? And you're not playing bingo, but it sure feels like it, doesn't it? How's this one different? They're going to be seen with B's and C's, but there are going to be some differences in their choices, in their styles. Now it's not curricular and experiential. Do you see how it breaks it down? Curricular, biblical, and generational, both form, content, and grouping. So Tom Bandy has provided for us a deeper, more intimate look at every one of the Experian Mosaic codes to help you understand how to care for, how to minister to, how to reach, how to lead worship with, even how to the look and feel of your sanctuaries and your worship centers and your fellowship tools. So this Bandy guide to me is a very powerful tool to help you to learn the anatomy of an Experian Mosaic.
Can you scroll down a little bit? I want to see the I'm curious the communication, if it's that different. Similar. Okay.
Not too much. It's still similar. It's still similar. Yeah. So do you begin to understand Experian Mosaic codes and how to better read them?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So Bandy is something you need to know about to use if you're trying to really get a better handle on that detail of an Experian Mosaic segment.
Yeah, that's really helpful because you can try to parse out what these shorter little infographics are,
Yeah, yeah.
but
I just think it's a much more powerful tool
yeah,
now if
yeah.
you have that kind of. And Tom Bandy, he spent a lot of time building this out. In fact, there are books. I don't think I pointed it out to you, but I should have. If I go back and open that again, I'm going to let you see it. Um, Here, oh, by the way, here are two videos: how to read and understand the mosaic portrait, how to understand portraits for mission planning. Here's that Bandy guide again, and I wanted you to see who he is. And he's written books: See, Know, and Serve, The People Within Your Reach, from Abingdon Press. Another one called Worship Ways, and another one called Spiritual Leadership. Bandy wrote all three of these, and they are kind of the foundational source of which he built this information off of. So, FYI, now you know more about Tom Bandy and who he is and where he came from, authored by him from that perspective. So, I wanted you to see that today as a part of our presentation. Okay, so now let's come over and go another layer deep. I've already shown you how to save a shape, so I'm not going to do that. But I also showed you, I think last time, under plotting, how I can go do Neighbor Center. And I can come in and say, you know what, I'm looking for families that are what?
So it's funny, just real quick, guys, as a comparison for Heidi's sake, my top 10 mosaic segments, the first two are BO7 by a long shot, 28.68%.
Mhm.
Then C13, which we looked at, which was 11.24%. And then after that is A01, Power Elite American Royalty at 10.14%. So
Yeah,
there's money in my congregational area.
there is really money in your
That's
congregational area.
fantastic.
I
Interesting.
haven't seen any of it, but I know
It's there.
it's there.
I didn't say they gave it. I said
No,
it's
they don't
there.
give it. They have it, but they don't give it. But
So you do,
I'm trying to start a classical Christian school, for example,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm going to have to raise probably $20 million. So,
Now you know
All
it's
right, let's
realistic.
yep.
now, Eric. Here's what I want you to hear me say. And I'm going to. Have we talked comparative insight report yet? We haven't, have we?
Don't think so.
I'll hit that in a minute. All right. So now then, I'm going to plot our neighbors, and specifically looking for the neighbors in our community that are either BO7 or C13. And I'm going to plot them. And so now, instead of green measles, I'm going to have the red mumps. So give it just a moment. And lo and behold, what do I see? Neighbors. Do you realize what you see right here, ladies and gentlemen?
Hmm.
All of these are homes that are either BO7 or C13.
Wow.
This is a single adult, 35 to 44. He's a BO7. Are there kids in the home? Not present in this one. But I can look at each one of these homes, and Experian tells me information about them from that perspective.
Interesting,
The
both
valuable,
Middle Eastern
the,
heritage.
yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to build a ministry, and so I'm going to come into this area down here, and I see I've got congregants in here. And I might want to come in and say, I'm going to start a new ministry in this area because there's a park here, and I'm going to invite them to come for something in the park. So I could come over and I could look for just that particular ministry area. And then I could pull address labels from the system. And then I could go, ask for address labels from the system. And it would give me who to communicate with to invite them to that event. this place is laden with BO7s and C13s. I mean, a boatload of them. So commonality is what I am seeing in this area. And if I back out, I said BO7 and C13. Well, guess where our congregants live? Not as many of them live in those same neighborhoods, but I do see a good number of them who live amongst our BO7s and our C13s. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And yes, I can come over and do another shape within the current shape that I'm looking at. So if I just wanted to pull up this neighborhood, I can do another shape within this area and call it BO7s and C13s in this particular area. And then I can do work on that particular polygon and analysis in that area. So let's do that. I'm going to come in, and I'm actually going to come back in. If you'll notice under view now, let's go over and do it this way. I'll come back to shapes again, and you'll notice now I've got two shapes. I've got this polygon, and I've got a second polygon. So I can turn that on or turn that off, and I'll turn off the other one. So now this is the only one I'm looking at. You with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
So now when I go do a demographics report, I want to introduce you today to a comparative insight report. And I'm going to generate that report. And I want to clarify before I even show it to you three things. Number one, this is not saying this is who Heidi is and this is who Eric is, but it's looking in this shape that this is more than likely who makes up our church family and comparatively who lives in this study area. All right. So I'm going to open comparative insight. And with that understanding, this does not mean that Heidi is rich or that Eric is rich, but it's showing me that this is the neighborhoods in which they live in to compare them to. So it wants to know who are we, who are our neighbor, and then it's going to do the comparative mosaic segment report. And then, Eric, I want to get to this for your purposes of your questioning. If I could get them to give more money, because I really understand who I'm going after and how I'm going to do that and what budgeting resources it's going to take, I'm going to show you the potential of your group and say, if you can give me 1% more or 2% more than you currently give me, look what it's going to afford us in ministry opportunity. We'll get there. I'm going to go down, and at the top of every page, it's showing me three things. It's showing me the total number of congregants that it's showing me in this shape, number of households, and then it's showing me the total population in the study area. There's only 34 households, but there are almost 9,000 households in that shape. It's going to tell me, and there are 71 mosaic segments in Experian. There are 45 different ones in this neighborhood.
Wow, that's crazy. 45
different mosaic segments. But I've got the total number of households in this area are five neighborhoods that are going to match up with one of those mosaic segments. So the likelihood is that they're going to be in one of five, but then I can actually see in this area, there's 45, and we have a potential reach rate or penetration rate of over 3%. Anything over 1% is a rich, targeted community for us to reach out to because we have potential likeness to the people in this community. So now it's going to compare in every one of these pages. It's going to look at the study area, the percentage of folks in these age groups in this particular case, and the count to go along with the percentages, and then weighted people mosaic segments weighted by presence in our church maybe not the individuals, but where they live. So yeah, the 19 to 24s, 2.9%, 2.1%, about the same as the community. You see the red? That's not where I want to focus my ministry opportunity in this little study area. But what do I want to focus on? I want to focus it on the 51 to 65s, the 66 to 75s, even the 76 plus. So in that little neighborhood, I'm seeing where our likenesses are in that little study area. You with me so far? Is this making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Average age of household, count weighted by average age of household. And it's giving me the knowledge then that we're very similar to this community, 50 to 52 as far as age. Still over 100. It doesn't show green, so it's not a huge one. But when I come down, how about families without kids in the household? Well, 53% of these households don't have kids. 63% of the congregants in this area don't have kids. So we've got a high likelihood of reaching these folks because they're like us. If I go down to single parents without kids, 3% in this neighborhood versus families in the church likelihood is only 1%. And not really. What about, I don't know the unknown status. So there's some of that. And census will sometimes tell you, shows me ages of children that I'm likely to see in the study area versus in these families or in this community where these families live. Who are we as neighbors? Look at estimated household incomes. Where's the money at in this neighborhood? Somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000, both church and study area. If I go on down, I look at ethnicity. What do I see? This is not going to shock you. 74% are Caucasian. 75% of our congregants in that community, Caucasian. Education. Can you go and do elementary level education with the folks in this area? Nope. I'm going to need at least a bachelor's or a graduate degree to really begin reaching this community with content. Guess what? Estimated household occupation, retired, 22%. So are we reaching for teenagers and for young married adults in BO7 or in this particular little small study area? Nope. What about mosaic segments? How do we compare to the community? Well, guess what? This community in 2024 was 24%. Guess what? C13. In our church, the 17 households that are represented are 50%, 204 composite index, which means I've got a big time capability to reach C13s in this neighborhood. BO7 was the second one. 20% of the community is BO7. 35% of our community, congregants in this community or where they live in their neighborhood, 169% composite index. Can I reach this age group with our folks? Yes, absolutely. I look on down, I see H26, progressive assortment. There it is. Oh, and I see cosmopolitan B10. Folk like the community. Look for the green. Look for the green. So that I see that, I can understand how we compare to our community. Making sense? Questions, thoughts, comments? All right. One more area. Here's the Mosaic Handbook, but I'm going to go on down here because now then in our church, we're representing 34 households, number of mosaics, 45 in the neighborhood, and the study area, total number 8,000, almost 9,000. But there are 5 likenesses in the community of faith versus the other. I come down, I see people, households, median income by segment, Therefore, an amount, you'll notice the 1-to-1 gives you 172.09 or 90. If I come down to the bottom of this list, I'm going to discern, I don't know this neighborhood exactly, but they're saying the potential income for these households in this little area is $3.5 million. Now I'm looking at church budget, and we're giving about $2 million. Pretend. I know who I want to reach now. I know what we need to do ministry wise. I know what we need to do staffing wise. I know who we need to go after to reach this community. And because I can actually speak with authority and with knowledge, I can now say to the community of faith, we're planning budget for the next year, and we want to do these 3 ministries, and we want to add a staff member to reach the BO7s and the C13. Now that I can speak with authority and with understanding of why we need to do this, if I can get them to give me 2% more, that's another $70,000. Another 3% more, that's $100,000. You can do a lot of ministry for the $107,000. Get them to increase their giving by 5% from what they're doing right now, and you can go up to $180,000 more in ministry than you could do, presuming they give at their current level. I'm just making a presumption that they gave at $2 million level. Does that make sense? Do you understand the value of the comparative insight report in helping you compare apples to apples,
Yes.
apples to oranges?
Helpful.
And most importantly, this piece helps me to know how to go after those additional funds that I want to be about to reach those communities. And that is comparative insight. Remember, it's not saying that Eric makes this amount of money or that Heidi makes this amount of money. The neighborhoods in which they live do. The developer for this product, his name is Jason. And Jason says, when I lived in California, I lived in a rental house in an extremely well-to-do neighborhood. Probably $250,000 salaries. And he was renting a house in that neighborhood. And I can guarantee you, in the world he lives in, it ain't no $250,000 salary. But because he lives in a house in that neighborhood, it's lumping him into that same demographic segment. Remember that when you're looking at Experian Mosaics, it's not looking at what Heidi and Eric do, but what the communities in which they reside are doing. Does that make sense, Eric? I see furrowed brow.
No, it does. I was just adding up my numbers on my side, and
yeah, right.
Me 23.36% in the A's.
Yeah. Wow. If you've got that kind of money in your church, budgeting shouldn't be a concern.
I don't. That's the problem. But I need to find out where these guys are and plot them.
Indeed. So, all right. So I wanted to bring you to the bottom of this report to help you interpret it, understand comparative indexes, color coding that's here from that perspective. And I already told you the X's are for the colorblind folk. So I've introduced you now to comparative segment. I've done neighbor center, and I've done plotting of congregation. Any questions about that from that perspective? Next time, we'll talk about thematic maps and opportunity scans, and we'll jump into beginning to do some custom reports as well.
Cool.
Amazing.
Are your brains full yet? They should be.
Yeah.
Yep.
Definitely.